Tonight we are in the dunes of eastern Oman, and we are looking for a very special kind of lizard known as Diplometopon zarudny, the Zarudny's worm lizard. I've been seeing quite a few tracks, so we should be able to find several tonight. This track that we are looking at here in the sand is the track of our first Zarudny's worm lizard. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this track later, but for now, let's find the owner. Quite conveniently, it seems that this is the end of the track, and we stopped right before a fence. And there's not much to finding these. You just have to scratch at the terminal end, and hopefully there's a lizard there. Here we go. Here's our Zarudny's worm lizard. There are quite a few species of amphisbaenians, or worm lizards, that have heavily modified head scales, especially in fossorial species, but very few of them have a flattened, short, wedge-shaped snout in the way that this one does. In fact, the only other ones that I can think of at the moment are those in the genus Agamemnon from neighboring Yemen and Somalia. Of course, this is an adaptation that helps them to move through the sand, but more specifically, in areas where sand is packed, the same areas where animals create burrows, their wedge-shaped head allows them to create tunnels. This is also helpful during the rainy season, when the sand is not as loose as it is right now. This species' generic epithet also refers to its unique head shape. The name Diplometopon roughly translates to double forehead, so basically it got completely roasted when it was named by scientists. And on top of that, this is a monotypic genus, which means that when it was named in 1907, it was specifically roasting this species that we have here. Right over here, we have a mating ritual between two scorpions in the genus Androctonus. I just wanted to start this clip by being a little bit far away, because I've come across mating scorpions before, and sometimes human disturbance causes them to stop. So let's see. If you look a little bit closely, you can see that the hand holding is a little bit one-sided. The male is the one who is grasping the female's hands. I think in a normal mating ritual, there's supposed to be a mutual amount of pulling back and forth from both the female and the male, but there seems to be a whole lot of pausing as well as the male dragging the female around. I can tell that she's not overly enthusiastic, but there is a chance that this male will succeed, and I say that because they aren't trying to sting each other at the moment. I know that sounds like a really low bar, but that's quite often the way it goes. I've seen this mating ritual on several occasions, during one of which I did witness the scorpions stinging each other, but on many other occasions, I've seen female scorpions cannibalizing male scorpions, and I think it's likely that those instances were the result of a mating ritual gone wrong. We're probably not going to witness it here, but at the end of this, if the female is receptive, the male will leave a spermatophore package on the ground, and then he'll guide the female over it so that she can pick it up. And then hopefully, at least for the male, they go their separate ways. Next to the two mating scorpions, we have two urchin beetles walking around. What we are currently looking at on this slope is the track of a lizard. Not just any lizard, but sandfish. This is the sort of habitat they seem to prefer most. These steep slopes with very loose sand. I'm at this spot right now because I saw one scooting around on this dune just before sunset, and when I spooked it away, I did take note of where it dipped down into the sand, and that is right here. I should be able to fish it out with just one hand, so hopefully it hasn't been magically replaced with a viper. Oh, it's right there. There it goes. This is Scincus mitranus, commonly known as the Arabian sand skink or the eastern sand skink, and since it is in the genus Scincus, they can also be referred to as sandfish. And so, of course, when looking at sandfish, I have to show you the swimming behavior. This lizard's claim to fame, along with others in the genus Scincus, is its ability to quickly burrow into sand whenever it wants to flee from a predator. But there are other moments during which they may exhibit that behavior as well. For example, during peak hours of activity, they'll dive into the sand just to poke their head back out, and this helps them to not be fully exposed while they're looking for prey on the ground, which mostly consists of insects. These skinks are fairly crepuscular, but more specifically active during the hours just after sunrise and just before sunset, and this is their way of staying cool while having good access to prey, because, as you can imagine, the insects out here also don't want to bake to death, so they're also active during the same hours. As you can see here, we do have another worm lizard track, and it appears that it ends here. So let's see if there's a lizard hiding in there. There you go. Oh, and this one's a juvenile, little one. When we found the last worm lizard, I said that I would later talk about its track a little bit. The tracks made by these Diplometopon are quite a unique aspect of its biology, and this is because these worm lizards create two different track shapes, which is relatively uncommon in vertebrates around here. So if we look at this one's track, we can clearly tell that it's split into two different parts, both starkly different from one another. This part that you see here is created when the lizard plows 1 centimeter below the surface, and the other type of track, right here, is formed when the lizard is fully above the surface of the ground and wiggles back and forth to move forward. This part where they wiggle on the surface is unlike any other track that you can find out here. Of course, the most similar would be a track from a snake, but even then these tracks are extremely recognizable. You'll see that there's little dimples off to the side of this track, as if the animal that left them has feet, and obviously these lizards do not have legs. The reason that those form is because when the lizard wiggles back and forth, it uses the tip of its tail to push itself forward, and swings it off to the sides to do so. And as we've been seeing with the last one that we found and this one, when they want to move through the sand, instead of wiggling, they move much like an accordion, which is something that annuli, or scales organized in rings, are very useful for. We have a conehead mantis sitting here in this bush. These are mantises in the genus Empusa. I think there are 2 or 3 species of Empusa that are recorded from Oman, and if I had to assign a species to this one, it might be Empusa spinosa. That's a species mostly distributed on the Arabian Peninsula, as well as South Asia. And as it goes with species that have a fairly large distribution, this one, if I recall correctly, does have several synonyms. Conehead mantises have shown up on this channel several times before, but this is the first time that we get to look at an adult. You can see that this one has wings, and this is also the first time that I personally have ever seen an adult as well. And this is just a little bit ironic because when we found them in Jordan and France, on both of those occasions we were able to find more than one. And on that note, speaking to the potential rarity of this species, I've checked hundreds of bushes in the area of various sizes and species at this point, not just for mantises, of course. So it did take quite a bit of searching to find this one. But I think part of the reason for this is that we are in a cutoff period. Since it is early summer, this should be the time when the adults are dying off and the first instars are about to hatch. We have a large camel spider in the genus Galeodes down here. Whatever the species of Galeodes is, it's almost certainly the largest one that can be found in Oman, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the largest one on the Arabian Peninsula as a whole. I personally have never seen a solifugid more impressive than this one. This is the size at which they're able to take down rodents, snakes, birds, and other large prey that invertebrates don't typically feed on. But that being said, of course, this one here is feeding mostly on bugs and small geckos. As far as Galeodes goes, the one that we have here is incredibly generic. There's really nothing that I can point to that appears to be unique about this one. In that genus, Galeodes arabs is known from Oman, so that could be a candidate identification for this one that we found. But at the same time, I should mention that Galeodes, I believe, is the most speciose genus of camel spiders. So really, who knows what we're looking at? And on top of that, the taxonomy and biogeography of camel spiders in this region is a little bit messy and not super well grounded. This is a giant milkweed plant. This is an umbrella thorn, and this is, I think, called keep. All 3 of these can get much larger than the ones that we have here. You can see there's large umbrella thorns over there. And these are great indicators for Diplometopon, because they're often found in areas where the soil is either packed or really dusty. Also, if my identification is correct, and this is keep, I forget what the genus name of this plant is, but the specific epithet is pyrotechnica. Here in this bush, we have a jewel beetle, that one right there. Another one right here. I think there's 4 more. Here, there's another one hanging out. And let's see, oh, another one right here. Oh, one more right here. And I think there was one last one. Oh yeah, That one right there. As for this one, I'm not too sure why it's so much brighter than the other ones. It's perhaps because it's freshly emerged, while the other ones have been around for a while. These are Julodis fimbriata, and I've actually seen quite a few of them at this point, but the reason that I finally stopped to take a look at these ones is because I have not previously seen 6 on one plant. Usually you don't see more than 2, maybe 3. These beetles are diurnal, but since I woke them up, they are starting to get a little bit active. In fact, it looks like one of them thinks that it is daytime, as it is now munching on some of these leaves. Speaking of which, this bush that they're living in is euphorbiaceae, which is a relatively obscure species of plant found in Oman and Yemen. What makes it a fairly interesting host plant for these beetles is the fact that I'm pretty sure it's toxic. There are a couple things that lead me to believe that this is true. The first being that if we take one of these twigs and snap it, you can see it produces a milky substance. A lot of euphorbias with this property are toxic or at least an irritant. The second thing is that this is one of very few plants out here that the camels will not eat, at least not that I've observed. And so, assuming that this plant is indeed toxic, there's also a chance that these beetles are sequestering that toxin and therefore might be poisonous themselves. Look at this down here. This is a shield-tailed scorpion. You can see it is quite large. I did make a video on these already. One thing I didn't mention in that video, the venom of the only other scorpion in the genus Apistobuthus, which this one is a part of, has been studied, and its LD50 was found to be 36 micrograms per kilogram. So if we assume that the average human weighs 70 kilograms, then just 2.5 or so milligrams of venom from this scorpion could be lethal to a human. And the venom yield of this scorpion is certainly more than 2.5 milligrams. But sting reports from the species are lacking. So as always, when we only have LD50 values to go off of, we really don't know anything about the scorpion sting. Just came across our third track here, and it seems to end right around here. So, you know the drill. Let's see if there's a lizard hiding in here. And there you have it. This is actually our 4th worm lizard, because just a moment ago I found our 3rd one, but I didn't record myself digging up the track because I was really unsure about it. It looked like it was already several hours old, but in scratching away I still was able to find it. So now we have 2 of them side by side. It was found just several meters away from here, actually. As you can see, one of these is a full-grown adult, and the other one has a little bit of growing left to do. As far as I know, there isn't any significant sexual dimorphism related to size in this species. Also, as we've seen across all 4 individuals, there isn't a whole lot of variability in the species. It pretty much only comes down to how speckled they are. But even so, you can tell that there's a little difference between these 2. Of course, I'm only including a few of these worm lizards in this video, but as I've mentioned, I have seen quite a few of these at this point, so there are a couple points I can make about their ecology based on personal observation. Something that's been quite obvious searching for these lizards in their tracks, they seem to have an overwhelming preference for stabilized dunes, as opposed to the dunes that are constantly shifting with time. So far, I've only seen a single set of tracks outside of a stabilized area. And a possible explanation as to why they have this preference is because the stabilized area contains a kind of sand that packs very well, and these lizards are able to tunnel better in that. And as far as we know, they don't feed on anything else besides bugs. And that makes total sense because their mouth is fairly small and it doesn't open very wide. It's about 5:30 in the morning, and I thought that we would go find another sandfish, this time obviously during the day, just so that I can show you what their normal activity looks like. I've managed to get quite close to this one here. It's quite a small one. That line of tracks right there belongs to it. The tracks I was pointing to a moment ago can be found absolutely everywhere around here. These Scincus might be the most common diurnal lizards in this area, but there is also a second type of track that these lizards make, and it looks more or less like the imprint of a large rope in the sand. This is the track that's created when the sandfish moves forward just below the surface of the sand instead of diving down. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of that behavior is, but I can say that whatever activity is going on there is exceedingly rare. That second type of track shows up in maybe 1 in every 100 tracks that I see. One last look at this lizard's diving ability. Oh, come on. That's so lame. Really? And there it goes. And that marks the end of this search for Zarudny's worm lizards. So I'm going to end this video here. Thank you for watching.